So yeah, that was a fantastic session. And now we're on to our second. Our next speaker is someone who you're perhaps more likely to see on TikTok than any other social media network. And we've got Louise Parker. So Louise is the digital PR director at Propellernet and has worked in digital PR for 5 years, securing coverage and links for brands like Kuoni, carwow and PureGym. And Louise specialises in creating link building strategies that both excite journalists and connect with a brand's audience. And as I've already mentioned, she already makes hugely popular TikTok videos, which I'm sure the majority of you have seen. If you haven't, do go and check them out. And it's not just on TikTok. I mean, I see them whenever I go on Twitter, on LinkedIn. They're all over the place, but they are well worth watching. And today, Louise is going to be talking to us about how to create stories that appeal to your audience and earn great links in the process. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us, Louise, and really excited to watch your session.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yes, as you mentioned, I'm going to be talking about digital PR and relevancy and creating stories that speak to audiences and also those very important links. So I'm going to start off, obviously, with a picture of Khloe Kardashian. Where else would I start? If you cast your minds back to before coronavirus, if you can even imagine a time, this was an ad that she put out with Febreze. So if you're not aware, Khloe Kardashian is a millionaire, and Febreze is a spray that you put on your stinky sofas because you can't wash them. So she did this ad with them, and this is the reaction that people started to give to the ad. So no one believed that she did any cleaning. People just saw right through it, and they thought, you're just doing this for the money, you will really endorse anything. And really the reason why this just didn't connect is because it didn't fit. She is a millionaire, it is a cleaning product, it just doesn't seem to be the right brand fit. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because this is a conversation that is happening at the moment around digital PR a couple of times. So this is just one example, but there are a number of people commenting on this particular tweet, including myself. Some people, and I totally see it myself, are starting to see some digital PR campaigns that have no clear relation to the client, and the company sticks out like a sore thumb, and it's a little bit jarring. Now, this is somewhat controversial, but I think I know why this is happening. And it is because if a story is good, a lot of journalists, not all, but a lot of journalists will still cover it anyway. They don't really mind what brand is giving them the story. They just want to cover a great story. So you probably will still get great coverage and great links. And I am totally guilty of this. Like, I am the worst person in my team for this. I will be the person in a brainstorm who will say, but this idea will get us loads of links, let's just do it. And I have to remind myself, or other people have to tactfully remind me, that you can get so much more from digital PR than just links. So things like traffic, brand awareness, social shares, and even conversions, even making actual sales, can all come off the back of great digital PR campaigns. And if you target your stories to a certain audience that's really relevant to your brand, it makes those impacts all the greater. And because of this, and because of our experience over the years doing this, we kind of see a relevant story as just brand and audience combining. So your brand, aligning with your brand would be what your brand offers and stands for. So Olivia mentioned this in her last talk. It's really important to know actually what your brand can talk about with authority. And then also thinking about your particular audience. So you don't necessarily just want to talk about your product, you want to talk to the people who are interested in your product, or those kind of people who are on the cusp of becoming interested in your product. If you can create a digital PR campaign that aligns with both these things, then you're onto a real winner. So it means that all our campaigns start with brand and audience insight first. So here's a little example. We worked with Trusted House Sitters. So their brand offering is basically Airbnb, but with pets. You get to go and stay in a house or an apartment around the world, and you stay for free, but you have to look after their animals. So you look after their pets or their chickens or anything like that. So to me, this is ideal. Like, that's a dream holiday for me. But for some people who either don't like animals or actually really don't want the responsibility of looking after someone else's pets when they go on holiday, it's just not their cup of tea at all. So not only is the brand offering really important, but the audience is really key as well. Trusted House Sitters didn't want to be doing stories to people who weren't aligned with that particular audience. So we really had that information to go on before we came up with our digital PR campaign. And what we came up with was a thing called pet plaques. So if you've wandered around London, you'll see the blue plaques that are for humans, people who have done incredible things. They are outside their homes, and we did a version for pets. So incredible pets who had done amazing things, like one pet saved someone's life. We put made a plaque for them and put them outside their house. We even had a mayor come and unveil one of them, which is pretty cool. So as an idea, it really engages with people who will put their pets, they are their massive priority, or people who just love animals. And so as an audience, it spoke to them, but it also gained coverage and links as well, which is obviously very important. And there are more benefits to aligning with brand and audience as well. So for us, we found that having a focus on audience for ideas makes brainstorms way easier. So again, Olivia touched on this, but if you've ever gone into a brainstorm and you've just been told, come up with ideas about cars, it can be quite hard, and you just are kind of bamboozled with where even to begin. And actually there's kind of a reason outside of marketing for this as well. There's actually was a kind of experiment that was done. Sounds quite weird, but some scientists put some kids into a field and said, go and play in the field. And a bunch of kids, there was just this vast field around them, and they were petrified and they didn't know what to do, and they just stuck right in the middle of the field and they didn't want to explore it, and they ended up very limited to where they explored. They put them into a similar sized field with a gate around it, and suddenly when they got told, go and play, have fun, the kids went right to the edge of the gate because they had some boundaries in place. They felt safe. They knew exactly the space that they were actually given to play in, and so it felt much more comfortable to them. And we find that with campaign ideas. If you're given some topics to work around that relate to your brand, and you're given a particular audience that you want to speak to, we find that coming up with ideas is way, way easier. Also, aligning with the brand and their audiences makes client sign-off smoother. If you're from an agency side, I'm sure everyone has had an experience where they think they've got the best idea, it's going to do really, really well for the brand, but actually they come up against an internal PR team or a brand team who are like, it's just not right for us, we don't want to do it. By aligning with a brand and giving the rationale for we're speaking to this particular person and this is why your brand is perfect to do this, you are speaking the language more of a kind of traditional PR person or a brand PR person. And from our experience, it's made our ideas our ideas sign off happens a lot easier. And then thirdly, creating relevant stories with an audience in mind helps you be seen them more than just a link builder. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with being a link builder. I am a link builder. I'm very proud of it. But in a client's mind, it is much more valuable to be seen as a broader marketer. So if you can start proving the wider impacts that your campaigns have by tapping into particular audiences and tapping into particular relevant subjects, then it means that you're going to be seen more widely within that company, and you will be kind of seen outside your SEO bubble as well, which again has really done really well for us in terms of really growing our relationships with our clients. So you might think, great, let's all just make digital PR stories that talk about the brand and our products, but not really that simple, unfortunately. In PR, there are editorial stories and there are advertorial stories. So editorial is what we are after. They are the newsworthy stories. You have to be somewhat objective. Your coverage and your links are all going to be earned, but it is totally at the discretion of a journalist. It's their decision whether or not they cover you or not. So it's got to be a really great story. If you go down the too branded route, so it can be easily done. If you're trying to be really relevant to the brand, you can sometimes just end up being far too branded. You are going to head straight to the advertorial department, which is where they will ask you to get paid to include your story, which is great for some levels of reach, but if you are looking to gain links for SEO, then that is it's not going to work for you. So the way we look at it is that you have to kind of appease and appeal to three different things to make sure that you get a really relevant digital PR story. So what journalists want to cover, what the brand stands for, and then what appeals to the audience. So in terms of what the brand stands for, this sounds like a really basic thing to say in terms of how to get to that, but immerse yourself in the brand. You can often get so excited about working with a new client that you just want to jump to the idea first, and you don't do the due diligence around learning what your brand actually stands for. And I've said kind of what they stand for because it isn't just what they sell. Obviously that is extremely important, and if you don't know that, then do that first. But once you do, it's then working out, right, what are their ethoses, what are their purposes? A couple of places that we find this information, and that's always freely available just on their sites, is sustainability and culture reports, investment documents, read any CEO or founder interviews, and look at previous PR stories. I'd say not every brand will have all of these, but you will normally always have at least one. And from reading them and kind of getting more detail into the wider brand, you can start to work out what your brand can actually talk about with real authority. And this is really important because you just don't want to commit any big PR faux pas. So for example, if you wanted to do a story about the environment, they're great, they go down really well with journalists, but what is your brand's green record? If you want to talk about women in business, then you want to sense check what the representation is actually like on the board. And if you want to talk about positivity, is the brand's imagery diverse? You know, if any of these don't kind of check out, then it's just not worth you doing that story, because your brand and your client just doesn't stack up to the story that you're trying to tell. And I think if you kind of bear that in mind, then you're going to avoid basically having this tweet leveled at you, because you know for a fact that there is a reason why your brand is doing this story. And then what appeals to the audience. So to be able to know what appeals to your audience, you're going to need to know actually who your audience is. We have like a lot of different ways in which we do this at Propellernet, but one of my favorite ones, and we are at a kind of SEO links conference, so it makes sense to talk about search data. So we use something called search listening. It's kind of like social listening, but with search data. This is a quote that my colleague Sophie Coley, who is our insights director, she often uses to summarize it. But if you live your best life on Instagram, you live your real life on Google. And it's so true. Like, social insights are really, really valuable, but people are projecting a particular version of their life on there. So you have to bear that in mind when you're gaining any insights from social media, especially something like Instagram. But on Google, no one outside of search marketers is looking at what you search. So you are very, very honest with what you put into those Google search bars. So it means that you get the kind of attitudes, worries, needs, desires of real people about your brand, your product, and your industry. So it's a really, really valuable place to start tapping into to find out who are the people who are either already interested in my brand or are on the cusp of being interested, and who we can convert. So search listening for us includes keyword research. So if you're already you already have your client as an SEO client, you'll likely have done some keyword research in which everything's kind of focused on keyword volumes. But also things like Google Suggest and long tail searches are really interesting as well, because we're not just looking at these searches just to rank. Just because things have lower search volumes doesn't mean that we can just, they are still very useful to us basically. And a really great way to start with search listening and to start looking at those Google Suggest and long tail searches is through Answer the Public. So it is a free tool, which it's very easy to use. You can pop in a keyword and it will give you something that looks like this. So this is basically a snapshot of all the Google Suggest data around a particular keyword. And for this example, it's chocolate. So they automatically put in the kind of prefixes of kind of question words, and then they do a bunch more as well. There is so much data in there. And it's a really quick way of starting to see a lot of data, but some great data about how people are searching. So I'd recommend putting in your brand, your industry, and your products. So for example, if you're a gym client, your industry is probably going to be around fitness, and then your products might be workouts and gyms, obviously, and personal trainers and things like that. So really broaden it out, anything that is kind of relevant to your brand. And then you'll get this huge, vast amount of data around how people are searching around it. And the real key thing here to start like marking out particular people that you want to speak to is find the revealing and interesting human truths. There will probably be some things in there that you are like, well, obviously that's the case, but you will, as you start like sifting through it, you'll start to find some themes which are like, oh, I didn't really think people would, search in that way. So for example, we had a gym client and we did this process, and something that came up a lot was people who were clearly scared about going to the gym, but were still searching around it. So there was still an element that they could be convinced to go. So people were searching things like, I'm scared to go to the gym, or gym anxiety, or how to stop gym fear. All this kind of stuff that helped us to build out an idea that there were these people that just needed a little bit of a nudge to get them into a gym. So we decided to create a campaign that spoke specifically to that particular type of person. We got 3 people who fell into that kind of demographic of people. So people who had never been to the gym before and were terrified of it, but had a little inkling of thinking that they might actually want to go. And we strapped heart rate monitors onto them and used heart rate data to find out the parts of the gym that were scariest. We basically got them to go and do all sorts of things in the gym. And actually what turned out to be the scariest bit was asking for help. So we ran this experiment, and then we also created resources and guides that sat on the client's website to help people feel less scared about going to the gym, to really prep them before they go. And the research itself is really like newsworthy and interesting. So from that, we gained coverage and links. We also put the campaign and the findings on their social channels, which did really, really well. And in turn, that got us a lot of traffic from new users, which was really important to the brand. And it even converted membership signups as well. So it was a lovely example of actually focusing in on a quite smaller niche of people, but still being able to gain links and actually having some extra bonus results off the back of it as well. And it's important to remember that no brand only has one audience. If anyone has been on holiday with a group of friends and the question about where shall we go for dinner comes up, you will know that it is impossible to please everyone. So I think it's really important to kind of know that you don't have to do something that is catch-all for everyone. You don't have to do something that's going to be all things to all people. It's totally okay to focus your stories on a particular audience, and that doesn't mean that you can, you know, plan in a number of stories that starts to kind of cover off all your audience bases, but take one at a time is my advice. And then finally, what journalists want to cover. So this is extremely important, because if you don't get any coverage, you're not going to get any links, and your client's not going to be very happy, because that's probably what they are paying you for. So I've been in digital PR for like 5 years now. And when I first started this, we use this quite often. It's by a guy called Jonah Berger. It's his thoughts on what he thinks helps things kind of go viral or catch on when it comes to content. And it's really great, and I recommend reading up about it. But it's been the kind of starting point for our own version that I just wanted to share with you guys. Because obviously we need it to work in terms of PR, but we also have that relevancy point, and we have the SEO point as well. So relevancy I've touched on. So it's, you know, does it work for your brand, and does it speak to an audience? The SEO part of things is again very important. So breadth of how far and wide can you pitch your story? So is it going to appeal to lots of media, or is it going to appeal to kind of new media? If you really need to achieve new linking domains, then you need to factor that into whether your idea is going to work for you or not. And then linkability. I couldn't think of a better way of phrasing it, but is it going to be something that a journalist is going to want to link to? Because again, coverage is wonderful, but if you are being paid to get links, then that is very key. And then the kind of, what will a journalist cover? So from Jonah Berger's steps, I kind of distilled a couple which I think are the most important. So emotion, does the story provoke an emotion? This has been spoken about quite a bit, but it can be humor, it can be shock, it can be disgust, it can be intrigue, whatever it is. I think there's a psychological thing about, human beings. We want to feel something. We want to be interested in something for a particular reason. So that is really key when you're working out your stories and working out whether it's going to get coverage. Like, does it actually provoke an emotion? And then the other one is social currency. So again, as human beings, we like to show off. We like to share things because they make us probably look good or smart or whatever that might be. So actually, is it going to be something that people want to share? Some of the most kind of, I don't want to say boring, but useful piece of content. So, 5 ways to clean your oven that you didn't know how. They can perform really, really well because they are genuinely useful. Everyone needs that kind of information, and people want to share that with other people so that they look useful too. So for us, if we can kind of tick all these boxes, then we kind of feel that we are starting to get to a really great relevant story that journalists are still going to be really interested in as well. So just to end, you've probably heard of an elevator pitch, which is where, a kind of a signpost of a really great idea is being able to succinctly and quickly go through your idea and for people to get it. Well, we have a slightly different one, which brings in the kind of audience and relevancy side of things. Basically, just tack on because at the beginning, and it forces you to actually give a bit of rationale to your idea. And obviously you could write anything in there, but yourself whether it fits. So an example that we've gone through is because people love their pets more than anything, Trusted House Sitters has created a new scheme to honour the UK's best animals. Or because people don't join the gym out of fear, PureGym has revealed the most terrifying part of the gym and created guides and resources to help combat the fear. You can start to like build out and you're like, no, this feels right. This makes total sense why this brand is doing it. So I just wanted to leave this with you guys. If when it comes to doing your next idea, it's quite a fun thing to do at the end to be like, can I legitimately fill out this sentence and feel really positive about it? And I think once you can do that, you kind of know that you're probably onto a really great, relevant idea. So thank you, that was my talk. You can follow me on Twitter where I do my TikTok videos as well. But for anything that's audience related, I'd really recommend following my colleague, Sophie Coley. She talks a lot about that.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for that, Louise. That was really great. Yeah, lots of fantastic insights there and questions already coming in. So the first question is, what does it take to make a study as you did with PureGym? How many people did you have to find and how did you find them?
So for that study, we just used 3 people, which does sound pretty small. And to be fair, I think probably a couple of years ago, I'd have been like, that is not enough people to kind of form a robust study. And yes, if we were taking it to the Lancet and we were doing some kind of big scientific thing, then I would agree. Yeah. But what we often do, we will look at similar campaigns and look at what were their kind of data pool, because then we can start to see, well, if a journalist covered it when they had this kind of size of data set, then and they did well with it, then it kind of gives us a sense that it will be all right for us.
Right, absolutely fantastic. The next question that we've had then come in is, do you post your releases or reports on client sites to get links back to that, with the worry being that this takes away from the exclusivity of the piece?
To be honest, actually, yeah, we put a majority of our information we will put on the kind of campaign page. Again, a few years ago, I would have thought no, because why would a journalist cover it if it's already on this website? But things changed quite a lot, and kind of monitoring what was working for us and other people. I think by having your kind of full data set or your full kind of campaign summary on the page on your site, it's a really good reason for a journalist to link, or it's a really easy thing for you to suggest, to say, it kind of prompts them a little bit. It's like, quote your sources and here's where everything is kept. So I would highly recommend putting everything on your client site. I haven't in the last few years had a journalist come back and say, I don't want to cover it because I can see it's already on your client site.
No, absolutely. It's I think we're exactly the same. I mean, there has, it was funny that you almost hesitated to use the word linkability. I mean, I think that's something that we've used for a good few years now, and I think it's the best way to sum it up. It's at the end of the day, we are, the majority of the campaigns that we're all running, links are one of the KPIs. I'm not saying all the only KPI, but they are one of them. So a campaign it's got to be linkable. And we've had another question coming actually. Is there a way to get insights into visitors to your piece on the site it's posted to, or should you just measure the inbound traffic that is directed to your client's site?
Yeah.
So I think yeah.
I think if in terms of kind of referral traffic and things like that, that would be based on kind of our Google Analytics access that we have. There are things like similar sites that will tell you kind of broadly speaking how many visitors they think a site as a whole will have. But obviously that is not particular to your particular piece of coverage. But yeah, in terms of like how many people have kind of visited your site off the back of the coverage, we go through Google Analytics. Yeah,
of course. And there's also social shares as well. Often it's, and that's one that we use is, identifying which pieces of coverage have hit social shares, and I think it's quite common, at least that we see, that the social shares will be often greater on a piece of coverage than the campaign asset itself. Again, another measure of how successful it's been aside from links. Yeah. So the one that I'm going to ask everybody, what's the favorite campaign you've worked on and why?
So I think the favorite campaign that worked on, it's from a while ago now, but it was something that we did for Long Tall Sally, who is a fashion brand for tall people. So their audience are they're very, I don't want to say body conscious, that they are very proud of being tall, but they are kind of like outside the norm of what people kind of, 5'6" and look a certain way. So we kind of really used that information to build out a campaign that was we basically created a mannequin that was based on real women's measurements and like 3D printed it, and it was in their shop, and it was used for like making their clothes as well as kind of like a fit model for like as a real person, because mannequins are famously just not representative of what anyone looks like. So that was really nice because it was like a really cool campaign that everyone loved, because I think at the time like body positivity was a really interesting topic.
Yeah, it was.
yeah, and it was
great campaign. Absolutely. It's no, it was a really good campaign, and it's good to see you share that one. So one more going back to the gym campaign. So for the gym campaign, how did you quantify data from 3 people as a reliable UK sample?
So I must say, like, I don't know exactly off the top of my head, but what we always do when it comes to things like that is we're really transparent about what data we're using. So we're not trying to like fob anyone off. So we had the 3 people, which we had their heart rate data, but we also had a survey of 2,000 people as well to get some more broad findings around people's attitudes towards the gym. So yes, there was the 3 people with the heart rate data, but as like to do that with 2,000 people would be quite a big ask. So we had an additional survey as well, which is quite well respected for journalists. But both of those things we were really honest about what the data source was and things like that.
Fantastic. Well, that's all brilliant. I mean, there are a few more questions, but I think we're out of time on that.